Hello, good evening, and good day, everyone, and welcome to the Ask Abhijit show. This is episode 378. I hope you're all doing great. Before we get into the questions that I'm sure you have, lots of them, but let's first see who all is there on the live stream, on the live chat. Let me see who all is there. Anonymous G74RU, Dark Knight 88, Aryan Kumar V4K, Truth Lover, Dhruv 3764, Pallav Pallav Agarwal, the Hell Dragon, Rahul Naik, ER Drubsha is here from Nepal. Good to have you. Good to have you. I hope everyone in Nepal overcomes the recent tragedy. Rohan Bidi, happy Saturday to you, sir. Rahu is here from, Rahu 0009. Anuradha Kumari is here. Geopolitical Dubai is here from Indore. Good to have you, sir. ECE4U3344. This is Kasim Kota Som Sagar from Vishakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Good to have you, sir. Thank you so much for being here. Ameya Tulpule is here. Skand AC is also here. Who else do we have? Rahul Dunake. Good to see you, Rahul Dunake. And who else? Ayush Singh. Pranam Sarji. Pranam. Good to have you. Mary Kane. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, Mary. I hope you're doing good. Indianology is okay. Abhishek Shukla from Kanpur. Good to have you, Abhishek Shukla from Kanpur. Who else do we have? Ayush. Another Ayush is here. A different Ayush. Ayush 17. Ayush 17 is here. Gamma YTT90. Nikita Lalsa. Namaskar, sir. Manisha Kadoso. Good evening, ma'am. Namaste, ji. Namaste. Animals for Laugh is here from Mumbai. Good to have you, Animals for Laugh. GK87 is here. Namaste, ji. Namaste. Somi 0709 is here from Jaipur. Good to have you, Somi. Mahek Kata is here from Ethiopia. Namaste, ji. Good to have you from Ethiopia. Ritik Kothari, Jai Jinendra, indeed. Tushar Kalburgi, Namaste, ji. Namaste, sir. Rahul Khanvilkar is here as well. Who else? Anup 0309 from Pune, Chinchwad. Good to have you. Anabil Sarkar, Namaste. Random Skull, good to see you. Good to see you. Animish Bharatiya, Namaste, sir. Subit here, 36. Good evening. Utkarsh Shukla, good evening. Joy Dikshit, buenas noches, indeed. Amisha Mishra, good to have you, ma'am. Good to see you. Who else? Srihari Arun is here from Mumbai. Good to see you as well. Shreya Mitra is here from Moscow. Rahul Gandhi is here. Okay. Aspiring Brahman is also here. Nutan Roshan, O Arya, Namaskaram. Tanmay Singh, yo bro, all good. Bhavya Shrini, Divesh Gagre, Namaskar, Namaste. Uncertainty Principle 7652. Animish Parthe once again. Nikhil is here. Hello. Ashutosh is also here with us. Shri Hari Arun. Hail Rudra, sir. Hail Rudra. Soumya Datta. Good evening. Rishabh Datta Goswami. Hello. Who else? Ankita Kachap. Good evening, ma'am. Good to see you after a while. I hope you're doing good. Good evening. Jai Dikshit. Hello, sir. Good to see you also for a while. After a while. Nikita Lalsa. Who else? Prithviraj Rajput. Jai Hind, sir. Jai Hind indeed. Sujit Shanagonda. Namaskaram. Good to see you. Good to have you back. UCOK is here. Hello. Shivam Norial. Hello, Ji. Hello. Who else? Divesh Kagre once again. Priyanshi Sood. Om. Good to see you, ma'am. Priyanshi Ji. Sachin H is here. Hello. I Ankit is here from England. Ram Ram Sarji. Dr. Atul. Hello. Good evening. Ashna John. Good evening. Kencho Sam is here from the kingdom of Bhutan. Good to have you from Bhutan. Good to have you. I hope that it's not too cold. Okay. Shiva Sai is also here. Abhishek Laik. Abhik Laik is here from Kolkata. Shivam Norial is here from Kotdwar, Uttarakhand. Good evening. Good to have you, sir. Dr. Atul is also here. Who else? Lots of Ayushas are here. Yes. So Swayansh Suman Panda is here from Sambalpur, Odisha. Good evening. Okay, let's take some questions. Otherwise, I will do this all night. Let's take some questions. What questions do we have? Let's see. Where shall we begin? Let's go with this. Dark Knight says, I saw your chat with Abhijit Ayamitra. He said that Japan and South Korea might go nuclear. You say that Japan and South Korea are under military occupation. Yes, American military occupation. So the master will never allow this. And I agree with you. So why didn't you counter him? Okay, why didn't I counter him? See, I have a certain way of doing podcasts. Why do I do podcasts? Why do I have other people come in on my channel And why do I have essentially discussions with them? Why do I do that? I do that so that you all get to get exposure to different perspectives that are not necessarily mine. So when I have somebody on the podcast, their perspectives are not going to be identical with mine. They will differ, right? And the way I do the podcasts, it's very different from the way other Indian podcasters do it. I am not an argumentative podcaster. I allow my guests to speak. I do not keep interrupting them. I do not try to show off my fantastic knowledge of whatever subject the guest is speaking about. I keep quiet. I let them speak. I may speak maybe 5% of the time, 95% of the time, they will speak. That's how I do it. And there's going to be differing opinions, differing views that I don't necessarily agree with. That is very often the case. But I will not push back. I will not argue. I will not counter my guests. I don't want my guests to feel uncomfortable. I want them to speak comfortably without being interrupted and without something being put in their face that, you know what, you are wrong, my view is different. No, I don't want to do that. I've had many people like this on my podcast. Vilina Chakarova, there are many things I don't agree with her about. That's fine. That's fine. Right? So I don't have this argumentative, confrontational style of podcasting. I don't do that. My position is very much on the record. You all know what my position is. Now, the guest may have a different position. That's fine. I'm not going to push back, counter, argue any of that. I don't do that. This is not a news debate. This is not a regular Indian podcast. So that's why I didn't do that. Of course, my view is that Japan is not a sovereign nation, neither is South Korea. Both are under essentially permanent military occupation. Who is occupying these two countries? It's the United States. Can anyone dispute the fact that there are more than 130 permanent US military bases on Japanese territory? No one can dispute that. And there's more than 100 American military bases on South Korean territory. How is that nation sovereign when you have more than 100 military bases of a foreign nation on your territory? It's not a sovereign nation, right? It's not a sovereign nation. Now, if you're not a sovereign nation, you cannot make your own decisions. Somebody else, the foreign occupier, is going to decide a lot of things for you. You will not be allowed to have interests or pursue interests that diverge from those of the foreign occupier. All right? Now, with that said, is it possible that Japan may go nuclear? Yes, it may go nuclear. It may go nuclear in a way that serves American interests. South Korea may also go nuclear. It also, if it does go nuclear, it will be only allowed to go nuclear in a way that serves American interests. For example, you have nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads on Turkish territory at Incirlik Air Base, military base. These are gravity bombs. And none of the Turkish military aircraft, are capable of dropping those gravity bombs. Only American aircraft can do that. And those nuclear warheads are not in the custody of Turkish military personnel. Those are in the custody of American personnel. So these are American weapons deployed on Turkish territory and controlled by American personnel, and they will only be used if they are ever used to further and promote American interests. The same could happen to Japan. The same could happen to South Korea. So it's not like the Japanese government is going to decide, okay, tomorrow we're going to start the nuclear weapons program, and in a month's time, we're going to have nuclear warheads. The Japanese government is not in a position to decide such things. And the same applies to South Korea. That's my position. It's been very clear. It's been very consistent for years. Now, let's say another guest comes into my podcast and has a different opinion. I will allow them to speak. I will allow them to express their opinion. And I'm not going to push back, because hopefully you all are aware of my position. I don't want this to be an uncomfortable experience for my guests. I don't want them to have, to feel hassled, to feel confronted, to feel like I don't want to ever go there again. No, it's okay. Let them come. Let them express their opinions. I value their opinions. I may have certain views and certain opinions about various things, but I'm also aware that it is possible that I could be wrong in some things. Okay, you should have that amount of humility inside you, that you know what, I don't know everything in the world. Maybe somebody else has something else to say, and maybe there is a certain percentage of chance that maybe they are right and I'm wrong. So that's the way I see things. That's my worldview, that I may not always be right about everything. I have changed my opinions on various things at various points in time. One of the great examples is the Aryan invasion theory, right? So I'm open to differing opinions that may be different from mine. And that is something I would hope that everybody else who watches me should also learn, that don't be 100% certain that I am right. No, or you are right. You may be wrong sometimes. I may be wrong sometimes. Of course, I'm not saying I'm wrong about this matter. I'm 100% right. Nobody can deny the fact that these two nations are under permanent military occupation, but that's fine. All right. Pallav Agarwal says, good evening. Yes, kindly put some light on the recent highly coordinated 60-hour military air bridge executed by Turkish and Chinese forces in Pakistan using heavy cargo aircraft between August 19 to 21. So look, this thing happened. There was a significant concentration of Turkish and Chinese heavy transport aircraft, heavy cargo aircraft, military aircraft over Pakistan between these dates. And some of the at least one of the destinations was the Noor Khan Air Base, which was very famously struck by India during Operation Sindoor. That's what we know. Now, there's been all kinds of speculation that, so and so things came in, so and so things were sent by Turkey, so and so equipment was sent by China. That's pure speculation. There is no way of either corroborating that or falsifying that. Okay, so all kinds of people have made all kinds of speculations. But what we know is that there were lots of an unusual number of Turkish and Chinese transport aircraft, cargo aircraft, military cargo aircraft that did enter Pakistani airspace and did deliver, at least did land on Pakistani military bases, air bases. So obviously they're not paying, a routine visit to exchange pleasantries. Hi, hello, how are you? No, it's not like that, right? No one does that. So clearly the Turks sent something. They shipped some kind of cargo to Pakistan, and so did the Chinese. Now, what kind of cargo would the Turks have shipped? What kind of cargo would the Chinese have delivered to Pakistan? That I can't speculate. I mean, I can speculate, but I have no way of proving it. I may be wrong. The Turks could have sent drones, for example, large numbers of drones to Pakistan. It makes sense, actually, logically, that's what the Turks would have done. They obviously would not have sent rice or sugar or wheat or whatever. They would have sent drones. They would have sent other military equipment. The Chinese also may have sent radars or drones or whatever, or maybe missiles, or who knows what else, arms, ammunition, could be anything. But that's something that happened. Now, Pakistan is, as we know, a US instrument. It's a US vassal. Turkey is also a US vassal, and China is America's number one adversary. So how come China and Turkey are cooperating when it comes to arming Pakistan? Clearly they are arming Pakistan. How come? When Turkey and Pakistan are American vassals and China is America's adversary, how come they are working together to arm Pakistan? It's because the US is okay with this. It's with this one, the US is willing to give this one exception to China. As long as you cooperate with Pakistan and other countries in a way that harms India, we will allow that. So that's what I can say. What is known as a fact is that there was unusually heavy military aircraft activity over Pakistan between these dates, and the aircraft came in from Turkey and from China. We know that. What they delivered, etc., we don't know. There will be all kinds of experts who will say all kinds of things. There's no way of corroborating that. But this is what I can offer you at this point in time. That yes, Pakistan is being strengthened. Pakistan's capabilities are being enhanced in real time as we speak, not just by the US vassals, but also by China. Yeah. And the target, obviously, is India, right? So I'm sure the government of India is very well aware of what's happening, and I expect that we are taking the required actions. Amiatul Poulet says, bonjour, face à la montée en puissance de la Chine, l'Inde doit-elle renforcer son rapprochement avec les États-Unis et l'Europe au risque de compromettre sa tradition d'autonomie stratégique. So what he's asking is, we know that China is rising in power. La montée en puissance, China's rise to higher and higher levels of power. We are seeing that, right? China is getting more powerful. So in keeping that in context, the threat that a rising China poses to India, should India strengthen its rapprochement, its relationship with the United States and Europe, at the risk of compromising India's great strategic autonomy, India's great tradition of strategic autonomy? That's the question. Look, India's tradition before 2014 was that of non-alignment. After 2014, it's been multi-alignment, or what some would call strategic autonomy. That we will be aligned not with one nation or with one power. We will work together with a lot of nations. Wherever we have a convergence of interests, we will explore those avenues and work together to take our interests together in a shared positive direction with all kinds of nations. That's strategic autonomy. But we will not become a strategic extension of somebody else's interests. That is strategic autonomy, if that makes sense for a middle power or rising middle power like India. India is not a great power. India is not a third-rate power anymore. India is a power that matters. Yes. And India has, the past, let's say, 2.5 decades, cooperated with two major powers. One is the United States and all its vassals. The other is Russia. And the common threat has always been China. Even for Russia, China is a threat, by the way. Okay, you may not see it that way because of the ongoing apparent bonobi between Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi, but that's the case. Okay, Russia sees China as a strategic adversary long term. But now the US has a different approach towards India. The US approach since 2022 has been that of containing India. The US has implemented and is already in the process of implementing a containment strategy towards India. We will not be happy to see you rise beyond where you are. Wherever you are right now, whatever position of strength and power and economy and all that you have, you must stay there. You must not get more and more powerful over the coming years and decades. That is not in America's interests. So we're going to contain you. We're going to put in place a certain kind of architecture in the Indian subcontinent and beyond, in Asia. So the architecture in the Indian subcontinent is that of creating new vassals or reactivating old vassals. It's of recreating the East Pakistan, West Pakistan scenario. They've done that. They're also trying to, play the same kind of game in Nepal and other countries in the region, in the Indian subcontinent. Beyond the subcontinent, when it comes to the wider Asian theater, they are creating an Islamic NATO, the Mecca Pact, which will extend beyond a triumvirate very soon. In the coming weeks, months, years, it's going to extend beyond an alliance of just 3 nations. I'm saying it here. Mark my words. Let's see if time proves me completely wrong or if time vindicates me. We'll see. Right? And Europe is an extension of America's strategic interests. Europe doesn't do a thing that goes against American interests. So if America's interests are those of containing India right now, when it comes to India, and Europe can't do much to counter that. So India should certainly deal with Europe. India is, the India-EU strategic trade agreement is in the process of being ratified. Eventually, it will happen whenever it happens, right? We signed it in February or whenever it was this year. So we will do all that. And hopefully that is good for India's economy. But overall, the Europeans won't be allowed to do anything that goes actively against the American containment policy towards India. So what should India's strategy be now? It should be that of strategic autonomy. Look, the US is is willing to have India on its side. The US is willing to give India its strategic blessings only as long as India becomes an extension of their interests, which means India vassalizes itself to them. That goes against India's tradition of strategic autonomy. Yeah. So the answer to your question is India is alone. Okay. That's fine. It's 1.4 billion Indians. You're not alone. You're a massive entity. So India is alone in this. India will have people who will, other nations who will cooperate with India in various things, but none of them will actually go outright against American interests. Some may. Russia may. Belarus may. Some other nations may. To whatever extent they can. Okay. Yeah, so that's where we are. Rahul Dunake says, we all know that light takes the shortest path between any 2 points. Okay. But how does light know it's the shortest path when a photon is not conscious? Yeah, good question. A photon, how does it know that this is the shortest path? How does that happen? Look, there's a concept, there's a fact about the universe called wave particle duality. So a particle is also a wave, and a wave is also a particle. That's a quantum mechanical concept. So now let's think of a photon briefly as a wave. Let's say you have a pond, you drop a pebble in a pond, bloomp, and then you will have all kinds of ripples that spread out from that point where the thing happened, where the coin dropped, the pebble dropped, and these ripples they fan out in all directions, right? Little ripples, waves. So let's say there is a point A at the bank of the pond, and there is point B, which is where the pebble dropped. The straight line between point A and point B. Do these ripples know that there is a straight line? They have no idea. These ripples have no idea that there is a straight line here, a straight line there, whatever. They go out in all directions following the laws of physics. But those ripples that arrive together at point A, you see, that happens to be the straight line. So the point is that the photon, it simply obeys the laws of physics. Light can be thought of as a wave. And see, let's imagine there's a sheet of paper, and I call 10,000 people to draw a random arrow in any direction on the piece of paper. A random arrow. Okay? And let's say I have 2 points that are denoted A and B on the paper. Then eventually you'll find that people are drawing all kinds of arrows, but between point A and point B, there's going to be a superposition of a lot of arrows, and that's going to be the straight line between A and B. So the point is that the photon is not conscious. It has no idea what it's doing. It simply follows the laws of physics. Okay? And you have constructive and destructive interference. And that's how, and so let's say a ray of light is going in a certain direction. It should ideally travel in a straight line in curved space-time. So why doesn't it travel a curved path like that? Because of destructive interference. All the ripples, their peaks and troughs cancel each other out in such a way that the only viable path, or the only path that makes sense, is the one that takes the shortest time. Right? That's how it goes. So nothing is conscious. But the laws of physics and the laws of the universe are such that only these paths make sense. Okay. Rahul Dunake says, would the Chicxulub meteorite strike that took the dinosaurs off the Earth, could it have been less destructive if it had struck in the mid-Pacific Ocean? Firstly, it did not take out all the dinosaurs. Most dinosaurs were killed off. Some survived. And they're still around. They're still around. You can see them every day. They're called the avian dinosaurs. So the Chicxulub meteor strike, that disaster, it killed off the non-avian dinosaurs. The avian dinosaurs survived and they are still around. We call them birds today. Birds. The birds are the descendants of the avian dinosaurs. Some of them actually do look like dinosaurs. If you see the ostrich, if you see the shoebill stork, if you see the turkey and so on, they kind of look like dinosaurs, don't they? Yeah. Anyway, so now if this whether it was a meteorite or whether it was a comet, doesn't matter. If that object had impacted not Yucatan, Mexico, but somewhere else, Pacific or whatever, would it have been less destructive? Absolutely not. It would have unleashed the same amount of destruction. The same amount of, see, it was whatever amount of energy it liberated, it was so massive that it did not matter. It would not have mattered which part of the earth it struck. Even if it struck, the middle of the ocean, as far away as possible from all other land, the destruction would have still been exactly the same, because this object, it would have penetrated all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. It would have carved out a gigantic hole in the earth's crust itself, vaporized maybe billions of tons of rock and water, and set the whole atmosphere essentially on fire. And that fireball would have traveled the earth multiple times over. It would have still created the nuclear winter situation because of all that vaporized millions, maybe billions of tons of rock that would have then, saturated the upper levels of the atmosphere and created this gigantic black dust and whatever cloud that would have lasted a decade or more. So it would have made no difference where it struck, sadly. Yeah. Okay. What other questions do we have? We have one more from Rahul. Could the Nepal disaster have been averted? If yes, is it a crime of omission or a crime of commission? Look, it's too early to say. The water, CCTV cameras very clearly show that the massive flood of water came from the Chinese occupied part of Tibet. There are CCTV cameras that are on Nepal side of the border near the Gyurong port building. You clearly see that disaster came, that gigantic mountain of water came from the Chinese occupied side of Tibet. Now, there's all kinds of explanations that are already doing the rounds on social media, on X and wherever, that are putting forth the Chinese side of things, the Chinese perspective. That there was a glacier that collapsed somewhere and so on. And they are putting out some videos. Who knows what's the origin of those videos and when it happened and where it happened. So the Chinese propaganda has already been being kind of accepted as fact. We know for a fact that there has been significant Chinese activity, whether it is road building, bridge building, mountain cutting, dam building, artificial village creation, or whatever. A lot of such Chinese activity has been happening in the vicinity of where this disaster is said to have originated. The Himalayas are an extremely seismically active part of the world. The Indian tectonic plate is still colliding with the Eurasian plate. The Himalayas are rising a couple of centimeters or whatever it is every year. It's extremely unstable, this entire area, this entire region. And if you do all this heavy activity there, it's going to create instability. That instability will then it will manifest itself in the shape and form of landslides and glacial collapses and so much more. So on the surface, it looked like a natural disaster happened, a landslide happened, or a glacier broke off and fell a kilometer and created a 4 magnitude earthquake or whatever. But what caused that? That also we have to look into, right? The Chinese have had this, they have routinely withheld water data from India over the decades. Water data from Chinese occupied Tibet. What's going on? What's the amount of water that's flowing through various rivers? Is there any artificial lake that's formed because of whatever reasons? The Parichu incident, 2000, 2005, etc. 2000, in the year 2000 or thereabouts, there was this artificial lake called the Parichu that burst. It caused a disaster in, I think, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, wherever it was, in northern India. So, could this have been averted? It's possible it could have been averted. Whether China is not aware of if there was an artificial lake that came into existence for whatever reason, whether China is not aware of it, if there was a glacier that was on the verge of breaking and falling a kilometer down, were the Chinese not aware of it? Oh no, we were not. See, the Chinese are very opaque about what they do. So I think it is too early for me to point fingers and assign blame on China, because we don't have the facts, and maybe the facts will never become available to us because the Chinese will not release the facts. But I think it's very possible that this could have been averted. I don't know about a crime of commission. That's also a possibility when it comes to China. They believe in unrestricted warfare. Look up that term, unrestricted warfare. Find the PDF and read it. So, I think it could have been averted. The Chinese have always been like this. They've routinely withheld information from India, also from Nepal. And I would essentially say that, there's a very high chance that China could have done something about this, since this originated in Chinese-occupied Tibet. Okay, Ayush says Bangladesh is buying Chinese jets, citing it downed the Rafales. Regime changed and the US-China collaborate to bulk up these nations. Any solution? Are they actually doing it? Let me find out. Chinese jets, are the Bangladeshis buying that? Okay. Is Bangladesh buying Chinese fighter aircraft? Has a deal been signed between the two nations? Let's say Bangladesh is moving forward to buy Chinese fighter aircraft, but a formal and final procurement contract has not been signed yet. A specialized government committee in Bangladesh has completed a draft proposal to acquire 20 to 24 Chinese J-10CE multi-role fighter jets, Zahid or Rahman, etc. All that. No signature yet. Right. So, yeah, it looks like that could happen from what we just saw. It's possible. Solution? Well, Bangladesh is technically a sovereign nation, even though we know it's a US instrument now, US vassal. And Bangladesh is very much part of the US policy of containing India. It's fine. The US has its own interest and whatever. That's what powerful nations do. So what's the solution? The solution is not for India to tell Bangladesh, don't do this. No. You bolster your military capabilities. That's all you do. If you are on the receiving end of this sort of containment policy, you bulk up your own military muscle. That's what India should do. That's the solution, in my view. Very simple. Okay, let's see. Swami says, can you tell the story of Richard the Lionheart? Richard Cœur de Lion, how he launched the Third Crusade. He didn't launch it, he was part of it, and was later captured by the Germans and then died by infection during war with France. Okay, that's a long story. See, he was the son of, what was the guy's name? His mother's name was Eleanor of Aquitaine. He belonged to the Angevin dynasty. His crest was the Angevin lions, right? His mother tongue was French. It was not English. He was king of England for a while, yes. He had, he was not the oldest son of his father. He had a couple of other brothers who became king before him. And then he was king for a while, but he was hardly ever in England. He craved combat. He craved action. And he was always fighting somewhere or the other. So he was part of the Third Crusade. He did negotiate with Salahuddin Ayyubi. Yes. And he was never able to take Jerusalem. He's said to have seen Jerusalem from a distance, but he could never take Jerusalem, even though that was his objective. I believe Saladin had a certain amount of respect for Richard. He was reckless in the way he fought. He could have been killed on multiple occasions during the Crusades. He took incredible risks, but it went well for him. Then eventually he had to return to his kingdom because of political reasons and so on. And he eventually, on the way back home, he was captured by the Germans. He was in prison in some fortress or whatever for definitely more than a year. Eventually, his kingdom had to ransom him out to the Holy Roman Emperor by giving a tremendous amount of money, which was extracted by imposing massive taxes on the people of the kingdom. And eventually he did return to France, and he died a pointless death. He died a pointless death. There was no need to expose himself to a crossbow bolt the way he did. This happened in the process of taking a fort from one of his adversaries. I forget who it was. You can look it up. It was just a routine military operation. And he loved taking risks. So he stood and exposed himself, and he caught a crossbow arrow in his neck or shoulder or wherever it was, somewhere here. And it lodged itself deeply into his flesh and eventually became septic. And that was the end of Richard the Lionheart. A completely pointless death. That's, in very brief, the story. All right. What else do we have? Arjun says, if the Indo-Greeks could assimilate into the Indian culture, why can't they cookies? Well, I think that's a rhetorical question. I think it's a rhetorical question. I know what you're pointing at here. Okay. Nikhil says, any thoughts on the BRICS summit? Okay, the BRICS summit. Well, it's still a few days away, a couple of weeks away. 11th and 12th of September, if I'm not mistaken, right? In New Delhi. And before that, we have the SCO summit in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Bishkek is about a couple of hours from Delhi, but nobody in India knows where Bishkek is, right? Must be a couple of hours by air from Delhi. Would you like to see map? Yes, we see map. How far is Bishkek from Delhi? Must be like 2 hours. But nobody in India knows where it is. What is Bishkek? So, see, Bishkek is here. Let's see the distance. I may be wrong, not exactly 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, but let's see. Let's measure the distance between Delhi and Bishkek. It's about 1,600 kilometers. What's the distance between Delhi and, for example, Mumbai? Okay, that's less. What's Delhi to Chennai? Delhi to Chennai is 1,700. So you see, Bishkek is closer to Delhi than Chennai. Right here. Anyhow, the point is, there is the SCO summit first, in which I'm not sure if Mr. Xi Mr. Xi should travel there. Is there going to be a bilateral between Mr. Modi and Mr. Xi? We don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The Chinese are being very cagey about this. They are not willing to commit to anything. We know that Mr. Xi, we know that Mr. Modi and Mr. Putin are going to meet in Bishkek, and they are also going to meet in Delhi. So that's good. That relationship is on track, and the discussion is going to continue in Delhi. So it's going to pause in Bishkek and it's going to continue then in Delhi. Mr. Xi, will he come to Delhi? It depends. I don't know. We'll see about that. So overall, what are my thoughts on the BRICS summit? We will wait and watch and see if something genuinely constructive, positive, etc. comes out of it. BRICS overall, it's not a military alliance. It's an economic coalition. And it's not a very strong and closely knit economic coalition. There is a hegemon that seeks to hegemonize everything. That's China. China is hostile to India. It's also hostile to Russia. It's in the process of trying to turn Russia into a junior partner, into a vassal. So China is not a very friendly nation. Yeah. And the core of BRICS is RIC, Russia, India, China. And neither Russia nor India trusts China. That's the problem. So we'll see how it goes. No major thoughts and no major expectations from me right now. Okay, let us see. Okay, let's get into the super chats, shall we? Okay, the first one is from Mary. Mary says, listening in while. A backstory for a non-linear dynamics and ethnobotanical synthesizer, NDES. A chaos bot, an android that catalogs indigenous plant habitat formation. Love to earlier projects. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much. Ethnobotanical synthesizer. Is it? I'm not sure what that is. Is it something to do with music? I mean, you can convert plant signals into music. Some people have done that into acoustic form, audio form. Some people have indeed done that. chaos bot. Well, plant signals can be kind of chaotic, right? Plants do emit very tiny electrical signals. Those can be recorded, amplified, and then turned into sound, and that can sound like some form of music, because plants also have their own rhythms, right? So is that what you're referring to? Ethnobotanical synthesizer, ethnobotanics, ethnobotany. That's a combination. That's something that would synthesize botany with sociology, with anthropology potentially. Let's see. Ethnobotany. The scientific study of how people of a particular culture and region make use of indigenous plants and local plants, traditional medicine, and so on. Okay. What is ethnobotan? What is ethnobotany? NDES. Natural deep eutectic solvents. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I have any understanding or knowledge of this. So, an Android that catalogs indigenous plant habitat information, that would be interesting. Yeah, the way people use plants, utilize plants in society, in culture, in medicine, in healing, in other things, that is very much a thing. Yes, I mean, the Rig Veda does have references to a plant that seems to have been lost to us, the Soma plant. That would be really interesting. Yes, and I'm sure you can use machine learning, artificial intelligence to discover patterns and maybe identify some of these lost plants and so on. A very interesting idea for sure here. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much. Anuradha says, okay, this is not a super chat, but that's fine. Anuradha says, China boasts of its carrier killers, but India has a submarine killer named Smart that is the longest range, 600 kilometers in the world, and the only land launched one. Thoughts? Thoughts is, what are my thoughts? The Chinese have these Dongfeng 17 or whatever. Is it Dongfeng DF-17? Is it? I think it's DF-17, or I may be wrong. Let me double check that. Let me fact check if it is DF-17 missile. DF-17 missile. Conventional first island chain. Which is China's so-called carrier killer missile? Okay, that's a different one. DF-21D and so on. So not okay. DF-17 also. Right. So the Chinese have these missiles. And India has something called the Smart submarine killer, 600-kilometer range. So you can launch it from land and it can go and kill a submarine. That's something India has. So if you want to kill a submarine 600 kilometers away or 500 kilometers away, you first need to know where the submarine is. So you need aircraft that can locate a submarine using magnetic anomaly detectors and so on. Once you have the rough location of the submarine, you launch this thing, the Smart thing. It launches as a missile and drops a torpedo into the water, into the ocean. And then the torpedo does its job of killing the submarine. That's how it is. Fantastic weapon. And yeah, it's a unique weapon. I don't think anyone else has that sort of thing. So, thoughts? My thoughts are that it's good that India has this. Okay. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, what is this delimitation bill? Is it any good? That's okay. Let me give you an outline. I don't generally discuss internal matters of India, but okay. The delimitation bill is about, see, delimitation means to rationalize the constituencies of India, political constituencies. You have how many seats in parliament currently? 543 or whatever it is. And the constituency sizes and shapes were frozen in, I think, 1971. Now the constituencies have grown. Some constituencies have 2-3 million people. Some constituencies have maybe 1 million or 2 people. So one vote has more value in some places. One vote has less value in some places. Ideally, all Indians are equal. Yes, so every vote should have the same value. But if a constituency, if hypothetically a constituency of 2 million people sends only one MP to parliament, but a constituency of only let's say 100,000 people sends an MP to parliament, then that is not equal, right? That's wrong. Each MP should represent roughly the same number of people. So that's why you have delimitation, but the delimitation bill doesn't seem to address that issue. That's the issue, right? Because you have this women's reservation thing that's coming into parliament. 1/3 of the seats will be women. So to offset that, they want to increase the number of seats in parliament so that the existing MPs can get their share or whatever. This looks like gerrymandering, and it's not really going to serve the nation very well, potentially. I may be completely wrong about this because I don't look into these matters, but that's what one hears. Okay. Next, ICMBs says, hi again. ISRO has gone quiet these days. Any significant news from Aditya, Shukrayaan and Chandrayaan? Feels we ought to do a lot more. I am not aware of what news is there from Aditya or Shukrayaan or Chandrayaan. ISRO doesn't seem to be anywhere on the government's priority list. It's definitely not anywhere high in the government's list of priorities. Yeah. I have no idea if there's any news from Aditya or Shukrayaan or Chandrayaan. Chandrayaan, we've done 3. When is Chandrayaan 4 going to be launched? Let's see. When will Chandrayaan 4 launch? Do we have a tentative year? 2027-28 time frame. Well, that's not far away. Okay. First lunar sample return mission to collect moon rocks and so on. So government's approval is secured, and we are targeting a launch around 27 or 28. Well, that's not bad. Okay, that's not bad at all. Chandrayaan 4 will take off in 28 now, it says. So maybe a couple of years to go. When did Chandrayaan 3 launch? 23, right? I covered it on Twitter. So it's been 3 years and maybe 2 more years. So a gap of 5 years this time. Okay. Aditya is the solar mission. I don't know what it is doing. We still have Mangalyaan. Is it still operational? Is the Mangalyaan spacecraft still operational? No, it's no longer operational. Okay, fine. Is the Thea spacecraft still operational? Still operational. It's still collecting scientific data from its halo orbit, L1 Lagrange point. So you know what? I'm not sure what actual scientific work these spacecraft are doing. I'm sure they're collecting some data. But the instruments we have sent on this spacecraft are not cutting edge, bleeding edge instruments. Most of these missions have been technology demonstrators, that we can send a spacecraft to L1, to one of the Lagrange points, halo orbit around that, or to the moon or to Mars. It's mostly technology demonstration we are doing here. The sample return mission is also going to be go land, pick up a bunch of rocks, and bring them back to Earth. That's not really a scientific mission. It's a capability demonstration mission. And it's a very important mission, by the way. I'm not saying it's not important. Because eventually we're going to have to send humans and bring them back, right? So that's what we are testing at a smaller scale. So that's where we are. But, there's so much potential for India in space. And we're not utilizing any of that. Much of that. Maybe 5% we are utilizing. India should be a leader in the space race. We are not even participating seriously right now. Okay, Ashish Pandel is a new member. Thank you so much, Ashish, and welcome to the channel's membership. Good to have you. Shrishti Siliguri says, Nepal floods artificial or natural? Your thoughts? I think there's a high probability that this happened because of the collapse of a glacier or because of a massive landslide or something like that. And that sounds natural, yes. But these collapses of glaciers and these landslides can very much happen because of human activity. We know for a fact that the Chinese have been indulging in all kinds of irresponsible activity, mountain cutting activity, creation of artificial villages and settlements, creation of bridges and dams and so on in the vicinity of the place where this disaster is supposed to have originated. So if you're doing all that, if you have, let's say, drilling equipment, let's say you're cutting into the mountains and hills, in the mountains in the Himalayas to create a road or whatever, if you don't do it responsibly, it's going to it's going to destabilize the topology and the geography of the region. It's going to make mountainsides unstable. It's going to create cracks in glaciers that are 1 or 2 kilometers above a river. So it will look like it's a natural phenomenon, but it's very likely that this irresponsible Chinese activities may have actually been the real root cause of this. But there's no way of proving it right now. The Chinese are never going to accept this. They're never going to release any actual data or information that will prove any of this, because it's not in their interest to do that. The Chinese are very opaque about what they're doing in Chinese occupied Tibet. We can see what they're doing because of satellite imagery, which they can't hide. But beyond that, they will release nothing. So I strongly suspect that these are not natural floods. This disaster was not natural. It was most likely man-made. WBR says Vladimir Zhirinovsky once said that Buryatia is northern Mongolia. The Bolsheviks turned Mongols into Buryat, just like Russians themselves were turned into Ukrainians. The Buryats are Mongolic. Let's look at the map. Yeah, today's Mongolia, present-day Mongolia, is just a fraction of what Mongolia historically was. So look, if let's say you're in Manipur, let's say you're in Imphal, you just go straight north, take a straight line and go north, you will reach Mongolia. So this is Mongolia. Half of historical Mongolia, or close to a half, maybe more than a half, is occupied by China. It's what the Chinese call Inner Mongolia. Let's see if Google gives that to us, the outline. Inner Mongolia. Will Google give us an outline of that? See, the Google Maps will not trace an outline of Inner Mongolia. I don't know why they cooperate with the Chinese. Anyhow, and then you have the northern part, which is now part of Russia. Even a lot of that, I mean, look at the name Ulan-Ude. That's a Mongolian name. That's not a Russian name. That's not a Slavic name. It's a Mongolian name. So much of this is Mongol territory that has been absorbed into Russia. Turachem. Many of these names themselves are Mongolian names. So I would agree with, I don't know if Vladimir Zhirinovsky has said this. You are saying that he has said it. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe that's actually happened. And I would not disagree with him. No. So yeah, if he said that, he's right. Vedic Post says, can there be a civil war in the US in 10 years? There can be a civil war anywhere in 10 years if the government is weak. Look, I do not wish a civil war anywhere. Is it possible? It's possible. It's possible in any country in the world if the government and the administration becomes weak and loses control of the state of affairs. And look, the United States is, to be very honest, an artificial nation. It's an artificial nation. It's conquered land. The Europeans never had a presence there. They conquered it. They expanded relentlessly westward, killed off the natives, and a smattering of natives are left. They killed off probably hundreds of millions of bisons and so on. And then they brought in a whole bunch of other immigrants from other parts of Europe and so on. So it's an artificial country. And if you don't have a strong government in an artificial country, you can have a civil war. And of course, there's the political divide in the US, the political divide between the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans. Even that is pretty stark now, the divide. So it's possible. Nothing is impossible. I hope it doesn't happen, but nothing is impossible. Kakashi says, Doval visits China. He purges Zhang Youxia and all CIA agents and commanders who instigated Doklam Galwan. Is Nepal flood due to natural cause? Be honest. Why does Kakashi always ask me to be honest like I'm always dishonest? Anyhow, You want me to be honest? Are you saying I'm lying? I routinely lie. Is that what you're saying? Be honest. Not the best way to ask a question. Just saying. So Doval visits China. She purchased Zhang Youxia. Let's find out, when was Zhang Youxia purged? Was Zhang Youxia purged? That happened in January 2026. Doval, India's national security advisor, Mr. Doval, visited China the last few days. When did Ajit Doval last visit China? What were the dates? Doval, yes, Doval. See, August 24 to August 25. That's just 4 days ago. So Ajit Doval visits China in the last quarter of August this year. Just 4 days ago. The purge of Zhang Youxia happened in January or February, January, right? So what's the connection? Is there a cause and effect? Well, the effect happened before the cause, if you're saying that Doval visit is a cause. Correct? We just established that the purge happened months, 8 months, 7 months, roughly, before Doval visited. Is there a connection? I don't see any connection. Is the Nepalese flood due to the natural causes? Be honest. I think I just was honest. And I'm always honest. Okay? I answered the question. I strongly suspect, and there is very strong reason to believe, that this is not natural. This is a man-made disaster. Very strong reason to believe that. Amisha says, Samudragupta or Ashoka, who contributed more to India? Who contributed more? Look, both were unifiers. Ashok, he unified the entirety of the subcontinent under one empire. So yeah, and then he spread. Then he what he did was he took this obscure dharmic panth, obscure, unknown, almost unknown dharmic path called Bauddha Dharma, and turned it into a global, almost global phenomenon. That's what Ashok did. So he contributed a lot, not just to India, but to the whole of Asia. If Ashoka had not done that, you would not have Buddhism practiced by at least 200 million people in China today. You would not have Buddhism having become a part of the religion and culture of the Korean Peninsula and Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. So there was a massive contribution, let's say, right? Effect. Samudragupta did not do any of that. He unified the subcontinent. He conquered the whole of the southern parts of India, Sri Lanka as well. Probably his father conquered Sri Lanka. No. Samudragupta, did he conquer Sri Lanka? Let me double check that. Am I mixing up the Cholas and the Guptas? Probably did not. Did Samudragupta conquer what is now called Sri Lanka? I would say he probably did not do that, but I may be wrong. No. Yeah, there we have it. Yes, I was right. He did not conquer Sri Lanka. And the Gupta Empire, that period of time was tremendous. It was tremendous from cultural and civilizational perspective. There was a tremendous, amazing efflorescence, flowering of Indian culture. The Mathura school, the Gandhara school of art, architecture, so much more. So I would say both contributed tremendously to India, but overall, the overall impact, if you see, Ashok probably had a bigger impact beyond India. Okay. Kakashi says, no issue with podcasting, with Abhijit Mitra or even leftists or anyone. But others you viciously cancelled because they made one post. I viciously cancelled others. US Western style cancel culture. Can you give me an example of somebody I have cancelled? Seriously? Okay. Next question. Srishti Siliguri says, why do Native Americans look Indian or Asian? A lot of them, the way they look, you have to look into their origins. Now, this is a controversial thing. You know, the consensus among Western historians is that the Native Americans entered entered North America about 1,300 years ago, when the last ice age started declining. No, at the peak of the last ice age, because there was a land bridge between Asia and the Americas. And if you want to look at that, let me show you where it happened. Right, the Bering Bridge. So if we see Asia and the Americas, as you can see, you see, it's not really far away. If you measure the distance, it's about 100 kilometers. You see, Asia and North America, that's just 100 kilometers apart. And this is what? These are the Aleutian Islands, Bering Sea. So this land, there was because of the ice age, because of everything being frozen, there was a land connection between Asia and the Americas. And that's how that's how the ancestors of the Native Americans would have entered North America. And eventually this spread all the way across both the continents. So I'm sure there is a lot of truth to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the first humans entered the Americas only 1,300 years ago, 13,000 years ago. Most likely that's not true. But a lot of these Native Americans, they have a very close genetic affinity with the Mongolic peoples because of the recent history. And that's why a lot of them look Eastern Asian, Mongolic, etc. WBR says Zhirinovsky. Vladimir Zhirinovsky also said that the Buryat ethnic group is artificially created so that Mongols could not claim and seize northern Mongolia. And your opinion on Medigma Dorjieva? I don't know who that is, but okay. Look, Russia is an empire. It was called the Russian Empire. The USSR was essentially the continuation of the Russian Empire. And the Russians, they expanded eastwards and they took over a lot of these territories. And by the time, Russia came under the Mongol yoke, by the way, in the aftermath of the expansion of the great Mongol Empire. Russia was under Mongol occupation. Eventually, the Mongol Empire disintegrated. And then Russia became an empire eventually and went eastwards and took over Mongol lands. So the Buryats are Mongolic, no question about that. Yeah. Now, it's not like Mongolia is in a position where it can claim territory that's now Russian territory. That's not going to happen. But yeah. And who is Medigma Dorjieva? I don't know who that is. Sounds like a Slavic name, Russian name. Let's find out. Who is this? Medigma Dorjieva. Who's this? Well-known Buryat singer, professional pianist, composer, producer. Okay. I don't know who this lady is. I've never listened to her music or her art. But so I won't be able to tell you. I will not play it here. And okay, she's a professional pianist and singer and composer and producer. Okay, I will check it out. I'll check out her work. I am not aware of her, so I can't say as of now. Okay, Prateep Kumar Roy says the James Webb Telescope may have discovered a new cosmic object called the black hole star. How is it different from other objects that are already discovered? I haven't looked into it yet. I've heard vaguely that some such explanation has been proposed for certain classes of objects that are visible in the far infrared range. Very ancient objects, red blobs or something. So let's say so let me try and figure out what a black hole star could be. Just from first principles, I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know what mechanism has been proposed. So we know that there are certain galaxies that have this gigantic active galactic nuclei. That's just a massive, supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy that is actively ingesting tremendous quantities of matter, whether it is gas, whether it is other stars, whether it is water, whatever. And that creates a gigantic accretion disk of superheated matter that moves at relativistic speeds and gives rise to these two jets. That's a quasar, right? So that's what you have, and that's well known. It's a well known thing. And the amount of light that is spewed out of these objects it dwarfs the light output of entire galaxies. And it's not the black hole that's spewing out the light, it's the traffic jam that's spewing out the light, the traffic jam outside of the event horizon. So now let's say you have a huge blob of gas at the center of which there's a black hole. So it's not a galaxy, it's a blob of gas. And the blob of gas is being ingested by the black hole. So that itself could create the same kind of traffic jam kind of thing. And that could mimic a quasar as such. Right? So I think that's what it is. Black hole star, a star. So it'll shine with the light of a star, but it's powered by a black hole ingesting gas or any kind of gas, dust, any kind of material. Right? So that would give off the same kind of light output as a star, depending on the size and mass and so on. Probably that's what it is. I haven't looked into the actual news item. I have not looked into whether any papers have been published about this. Let me see. Have any papers been published? Okay, let's see. JWST, black hole star, research papers. Do we have any research papers? Let me see. NASA, strongest evidence yet. Nature, gas-shrouded, gas-reddened black hole at cosmic dawn. What's the mechanism? Okay. Let's try. Physical processes that led to the formation of billion mass solar black holes. Yeah, okay. Remain a puzzle. Okay, we know that. Several theoretical direct observations remain elusive. 660 million years after the Big Bang. Largest hydrogen bomber breaks reported at any redshift, and so on. We model this source as an enshrouded black hole in which the Balmer break and absorption features are the result of extremely dense, turbulent gas forming a dust-free envelope around a supermassive black hole. Radiation, yeah, essentially what I'm saying. Yeah, essentially what I'm saying, right? A black hole that is inside a massive cloud of gas-shrouded black hole. Essentially, that's what it is. Yeah. So it's different from any other objects that currently exist. We don't have that in the present day universe. But that's what we're talking about here. These objects that have been discovered are from the very early universe, less than 1 billion years after the Big Bang. So, yeah. Okay, Bharat says, no Hindu empire ever enforced smriti. The only logic of smriti could be stability during crisis situations. Indian dharmic civilization and society was stable for thousands of years with varnas and jatis. Okay, I agree with you. Yes, you haven't asked a question, you've made a statement, an assertion, and I agree with your statement and assertion. I agree. The logic of smriti could be stability during crisis situations. Smriti, yeah, it's a continuation of tradition, isn't it? Yeah. And our civilization and society was stable for thousands of years with varnas and jatis. Yes. Look, any civilization, any society that lasts a long period of time naturally organizes itself. It's called division of labor. And the longer a society exists, the more intricate and complicated and complex becomes the division of labor. That is precisely the jati system, the varna system. Varnas were never static. Jatis were kind of, these are hereditary occupation-based lineages, so they're going to be static. Even those can evolve over centuries and thousands of years. Varnas were never static, right? So that's what we had, yes. Correct. And Bharat says, caste is a Spanish word. Caste system is European institution. In the last 200 years, British government did discrimination, not Brahmins. Absolutely correct. Varnas as per Gita, Vedas is occupation, skill based, not birthright based. Absolutely correct. But that's what nobody knows today. Your education system, what it teaches you, is the opposite of what you say. And a lot of people believe that it is Indians who discriminated against Indians. Like I have mentioned so many times in the past, the British and the Turks instituted discrimination. One of the clearest examples is the Criminal Tribes Act. They designated entire groups of people, big groups of people, as criminal tribes. Once you designate a certain group of people as a criminal tribe, it means that anybody who interacts with them will also be persecuted by the British. And that's why society had no choice but to, for their own self-preservation, stop interacting with these people. That's why they become outcasts. The British engineered this, and then India gets blamed for this. When it comes to the Turks who ruled over India for several centuries in some parts of India, when certain Rajput kings would lose a war to the Turks, to the Mughals, and they would have to retreat to the forests and jungles, then the Turks who won the battle and took over the region, they will keep fighting them. Maybe they'll not be able to defeat them, but they will force the population to not interact with these runaways, with the fugitives, like they would call them. So over decades and centuries, these people became outcasts who actually were fighting the Mughals. That is something that's happened over and over again. That's how entire groups of people were outcasted by the foreign occupiers, because they were fighting for India's independence, India's freedom, for India's sovereignty. So all these problems that have crept into Indian society, these have been engineered by outsiders, but now the blame is laid upon Indian society itself, Indian culture and civilization itself. That's the problem. And they've force-fitted out external perspectives on our civilization, our society, and now that is taught in our textbooks. It's become part of our worldview today. And it's accepted. Oh, your ancestors oppressed some groups of people for 2,000 years or 5,000, I don't know how many thousands years. Right? Unacceptable. Seriously. Okay. Bharat says, please debunk colonial British propaganda like Aryan invasion theory. On podcasts like TRS, Dostkas, Rachaman, etc., people don't even know what the word Arya means. I've been doing that for years. I've been doing that even before I came on YouTube. Maybe you're not aware of it. For example, the AIT, Aryan invasion theory. Aryan invasion myth, Chavda. India facts. Let's see. See this. See this article. Oh, the site is down? Oh, well, that's tragic. The site went down. Anyhow, let's remove that. Okay, see this. Medium. This was published in 2017. 2017. How many years ago? That's 9 years ago. This is the article that has given rise to everything that exists today. Before I wrote this article, nobody was able to connect everything together. Genetics, archaeology, linguistics, literature, geology, rivers, so much more. Even mythology. I put everything together in one place, and now now everybody is an expert on this. It's fine. I put it out so that people can learn from it. I've been doing that for the longest time, sir. For the longest time. But yes, I will continue to do that. I will. Okay. Akshit Thakur says, can India become dictatorship without a civil war? How? Can a nation become a dictatorship, transition from a democracy to a dictatorship without a civil war? It can happen. You will need a certain kind of leader who has the fortitude to convert the entire system from a democracy to a dictatorship. It is certainly possible. It's extremely unusual and very hard to achieve, but it's not impossible to achieve. How? Well, by enacting, let's say, revolutionary reforms. So civil war, revolution, same thing, right? Essentially the same thing. I mean, the French Revolution was a civil war, wasn't it? So a revolution means a civil war. So you can transition in from a democracy to a dictatorship or vice versa by implementing revolutionary reforms instead of having a revolution or a civil war. It's possible. It's very difficult, but it's possible. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, is China secretly responsible for the recent floods in Nepal? I think it's very possible. Given China's historic behavior, given the fact that the Chinese were responsible for the 2000 floods in northern India, it's very possible. Let me fact check what I am saying. Am I full of hot air here? Parichu River, 2000, North India, flash floods. The 2000 North India flash floods occurred on the night of 31st July and 1st August 2000, when a massive wall of water tore through the Satluj River basin in Himachal Pradesh, triggered by a sudden surge from its trans-border Chinese-occupied Tibet tributary, the Parichu River. The disaster was characterized by a lack of early warning from upstream regions. The Chinese knew what was happening, what was brewing there. The Parichu River was a ticking ecological time bomb. And just 5 years later, there was another massive flash flood. So in 2000, the Chinese did not give India any advance warning of this ticking time bomb that was about to go off. Okay? This is something the Chinese have been doing routinely. They refuse to share hydrological data with downstream states. And we know for a fact that the Chinese have been conducting all kinds of activities, let's say, in the region around which this current disaster is supposed to have originated, in Chinese-occupied Tibet. They have been cutting up mountains to build roads, to build bridges, to build dams. They've been doing hydropower projects. They've been creating artificial villages and settlements. All geopolitical activities with utter disregard for the extremely delicate geological balance in an extremely tectonically and seismically active region, which is the Himalayas. And of course, today they'll put out propaganda saying that, you know what, this was natural. That propaganda is already all around social media. And the Western media is just lapping it up without pushing back. I think China most likely has caused this. Vedic Post says, why do oldest civilization people, Bharatiyas, us, act uncivilized while descendants of Western colonial people like Americans act civilized? Mainstream media looking for the root causes. Acting civilized, acting dignified. There are certain conditions that need to be satisfied for a group of people to act in a civilized and dignified manner. Okay? Let me give you a very recent example. The disaster in Nepal that's happened recently, just a couple of days ago. Utter disaster. Horrific disaster. Heartbreaking disaster. I don't know how many people have lost their lives. It's terrible, right? Nepal is sadly a poor nation, just like India. Just like India, it's a poor nation, an impoverished nation, just like India. I'm not saying Nepal is poor, India is not. No, we are both poor, right? The disaster happened. God knows how many people were killed in this flood. And sadly, tragically, you have human bodies floating in the rivers. And some videos have emerged of Nepalese people. A body has floated up to a riverbank or whatever. And instead of taking the body and giving it a dignified funeral or whatever, a couple of guys were trying to pull out the ornaments, gold ornaments from the lady's dead body. Right? Is that civilized behavior? Is it dignified behavior? It's not. I am not putting the blame on the people of Nepal. If something similar happens in India, it's very likely some Indians may do that as well. So what is the root cause of this behavior? Abject poverty. When you have no money, you're not going to act dignified or civilized. When you have no money, all that matters is survival. When there's no money, there's no food, all that matters is survival. You'll fight for scraps. Okay? That's one root cause of Indians acting uncivilized. The second root cause is the kind of system we have, system of governance, and the kind of system that was left behind by the British, which was never changed. The system is oppressive. The system is still colonial. One group of crooks was replaced with another group of crooks. And India is still governed and ruled as if it's a foreign occupying force that's ruling India. So these are some of the reasons why you have this. Okay, Teen Talks says there seems to be a bunch of similarities between the Odyssey and our Ramayana, like stringing a bow and meeting his wife across the sea. Are these coincidences? The culture is similar because the Indians and Greeks, we're Indo-European peoples with the same ancestry, deeper back in antiquity, right? I mean, the Greek language, Sanskrit, pretty similar in a lot of ways, clearly descended from the same origin, same source, which probably means the people also are descended from the same common ancestral pool, which means there's going to be similarities of culture, similar patterns you will see in the history and so on. Yeah. So is this a coincidence? Not entirely a coincidence. That doesn't mean the Odyssey is copied from the Ramayana. The Odyssey is a different story. All right. But yes, there are some similarities for sure. Somijit Mukherjee says, Har Har Mahadev ji, Har Har Mahadev, yes. Considering Bharat versus circumstances, I think the Maratha Empire is the most important and critical empire in our history. Reminder, Hindi lives. The most important and critical empire in our history. Well, one wishes it had not lost to the British. See, a lot of people believe that the British did India a great favor by ruling India because they defeated the Mughals. That's what most Indians seem to believe. That the British liberated India from the Turkic occupation. That's what people seem to believe. The truth is that the British destroyed the Maratha Empire, which had already defeated the Mughals and established a Hindvi Swarajya. The tragic thing is that the Maratha Empire disintegrated. It lost to the British. It lost its cohesion because of infighting and because of a decline of standards. That's how all empires eventually decline. The Maratha Empire sadly declined too rapidly and too, I would say, a little prematurely. Right? But yes, the Maratha Empire did re-establish Hindvi Swarajya across the subcontinent. The only thing one wishes is that it had not lost to the British. Yeah. Samrat Shukla says, why did Bose never launch a political movement or provoke public against the Congress or Gandhi if he knew he was parachuted and called him father of the nation? I don't care what words he used for Mr. Gandhi. I don't care what he said. But the question you're asking is important. Why did he never launch a political movement or educate the public about Mr. Gandhi and so on? Because it's very difficult to explain these things to people. Let me give you an example. Give you a different example, but hopefully it makes sense. Recently, we had the education protests in Delhi, Jantar Mantar. The NEET exam paper leaked. It was horrible for so many students, and that precipitated the protests in Delhi. And what were the protests demanding? On their placard, I don't know if they had placards, but let's say they had placards. What would they have demanded? What did they demand? The resignation of the education minister. Because that is one face and one person we can see. And if that person is made to resign, we got a victory. That's what we feel. But what they should have actually demanded, they should have demanded a structural reform to the education system. But can you put that on a placard? You can't put that. Because how do you do structural reforms? There are so many things that go into structural reforms. You can't put that on a placard. But people only understand what you can explain in one sentence or in 5 words. The average person can't understand deeper things. The education system of India treats the students as a resource. It doesn't treat the students as the stakeholders. It treats the business owners, the coaching class owners, the private school and institution owners, and the principals, and the teachers, and the clerks, and the peons, and the bureaucrats as the stakeholders. The actual stakeholders should be the students and their families and the nation itself. The education system is a scam. But how do you explain this to people? If I make this claim, half of you will say, what are you saying? What do you mean by this? It's very difficult to explain the true, deeper structural problems. If you say Mr. Gandhi was parachuted from South Africa and he's not a real leader, how do you explain that? You have to have a whole line of arguments. You have to explain all the different points and how these points come together to prove, let's say, that such a thing may be true. How do you explain that? You can't. Nobody will understand. Nobody has the patience to follow a detailed chain of arguments. People react emotionally. 99.9% of people react emotionally. They'll say, what are you saying? You are a traitor. You are a deshdrohi. That's what they'll say. Do you understand? That's the problem. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, what's a single crystal turbine blade? Why is it so difficult to manufacture? A single crystal turbine blade is, see, first of all, what's a turbine blade? It's a blade in a turbine. Let's see what a turbine blade looks like. A turbine is something that moves like that. Turbine blade. So these are turbine blades. You see, this is a turbine. Now, when we talk about jet engines, you have multiple such rows of blades. You see, this is a jet engine. It compresses air and mixes it with fuel and then combusts it and so on and so forth. Long story. So you need turbine blades in this. The problem with jet engines is that the temperatures that you and pressures inside a jet engine are such that they will melt steel. The temperatures in high quality jet engines are so high that they will melt steel. But you want the turbine blade to not melt. And it should last for hundreds of hours of operation before it has to be replaced. So that's why you need special materials. They need to be made of certain kinds of alloys of metals. And they have to be grown from a single crystal into the entire shape of the turbine blade. And that's a very difficult process. That's why it's so difficult to manufacture. See? Sergeant Skyland says, why is Trump reducing drills with South Korea? I have no idea. Maybe it's a temporary thing, right? That's okay. Maybe they'll resume it in a couple of months. Maybe right now they're focusing on Iran, where they have lost. There may be multiple reasons. I don't think it's something to read too much into. Bharat says caste is Spanish word. Caste system is European institution imposed on India by British government in the last 200 years. British did discrimination, not Brahmins. I completely agree with you. Like we discussed a while ago, I completely agree with you. We never had caste. We had the Varna Jati system. And that's entirely indigenous to India. And that is nobody's business. And we did not oppress anybody. Least of all our own people. Absolutely not. Good guy Safi says, hypothetically, if there was a third pole in the world, a fictional country with a GDP of $18 trillion, similar to population of US, meaning developed, would it be a threat to both, or would it team up with one of the existing poles? So let's say you are assuming that there's a bipolar world. There are two major powers, the US and China, which kind of is the case, yes. Well, let's say there was a third pole somewhere, a country somewhere with a GDP of $18 trillion, similar population as USA, highly developed. Would it be a threat to both of these two existing poles, US and China? Or would it team up with one of these? It depends. It depends on how much hard power the country has, not merely GDP power. See, let's examine two cases. One country, let's say there are two countries with 5 trillion GDP, annual GDP. One country, its GDP comes from manufacturing real world items that it either has its own population consume, or maybe it exports, or maybe 50-50, or whatever combination. So it manufactures real world things. For that, you need steel, you need cement, you need real resources, you need rare earths, all that manufacturing. And all of that can be used for military purposes. That's one nation. That's one nation here. It does real world manufacturing. It has real world industries that manufacture real objects. The other nation has reached the GDP of $5 trillion on the basis of mostly services. So it has a skilled population who are good at coding and programming and all that. And they export their services to other countries. So if other countries have various software systems and so on, this country, its workers work as contractors for them. So one country manufactures real things, one country exports services. Which is more powerful? This country that manufactures real things, because all that manufacturing can be used for manufacturing military equipment. So this is real hard power. This is nothing. Because if these two countries have to go to war, this country can very rapidly pivot its industrial machine to manufacturing tremendous numbers of missiles and drones and artillery shells and ammunition rounds and bullets and machine guns and howitzers and everything you need, and fighter planes and submarines and so on, because it has a massive, highly advanced industrial base already. This country, it has programmers and it exports services. What will it do if there's a war? So this $5 trillion and this $5 trillion, these two are very different quality of $5 trillion. One is paper money, one is hard power. So now your fictional country, it depends what kind of country it is. Is it a country that has paper GDP, or does it have steel GDP? That will make all the difference. Good guy Safi says this country, okay, it's a continuation. This imaginary country specializes in precision machine tools, industrial robotics, semiconductor equipment, optics and sensors, turbines and engines and aerospace, etc. Please fulfill my imaginary scenario. I've spent 25% of my pocket money on this question. I've always wondered if there was a developed nation like it. My goodness. 25% of your pocket money. Okay, so this imaginary scenario. So like I said, one country has real, like you've said, precision machine tools. Machine tools is even more important than machines, because machine tools are the machines that make other machines. If you have precision machine tools, you are a very dangerous country. You can manufacture anything you want. You can manufacture washing machines. You can manufacture cars. You can manufacture trucks. You can manufacture ships, submarines, missiles, drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, tanks. Very dangerous. Industrial robotics, very, very, very. So then you can do it very rapidly with less human oversight and participation. Semiconductor equipment, optics, sensors, turbines. You're a superpower. You're a budding superpower if you are that sort of country. So you see, if you have a country like that, it will not align with either the US or China. It will say, get aside, I'm the boss. That's what it will do. All right. I hope I have answered your imaginary scenario. If it was a nation that grew its GDP through services, it would become somebody's vassal. It could be split up and broken up into many pieces potentially by one of these two powers. But if it is a country that manufactures precision machine tools and semiconductors and all that, it is on the path to becoming an actual superpower potentially. All right. Pradeep Kumar Roy says many molecules exist in two mirror image forms called enantiomers. Yes. They have almost similar physical properties, yet behave very differently. Why is biological chemistry so overwhelmingly homochiral? No, I won't be able to answer this question because I don't remember. The last time I studied this was in college. It's a while ago. Enantiomers, right? Left-handed and right-handed chiral uh, forms of molecules, generally complex molecules, often organic molecules, very similar physical properties, but they behave differently. So I won't be able to answer this question because this is beyond my. I don't remember right now. I do remember studying this. I remember it was very interesting and quite fascinating. But why do they behave differently? Because of physics. The basis of chemistry is physics, of course. But how so? I don't remember now. How so? I cannot remember right now. I could look it up and answer that, but even you can do that. So, yeah. Rohan Biri says books on Kushans, Guptas, Rashtrakutas, Vakataks. I have not come across any book in my life that was written about the Kushan Empire. The Guptas. I'm sure there are books by R.C. Majumdar, who has covered the Guptas, the Rashtrakutas, and the Vakataks. But which book? He has got this big series about India, right? More recent books, I don't know. Majumdar is the reliable reference point, but those books were written almost a century ago. But they are still very useful, those books, R.C. Majumdar's books. But do remember, he had a colonial perspective to some extent. That is obviously going to be natural for somebody who wrote this during the British occupation. So you have to be aware of that. But there's a book called The Vakatak Gupta Age, I think, by Majumdar, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. I'm sure there's a book by him about this. R.C. Majumdar, The Vakataka Gupta Age. There we have it. And it's available on the Internet Archive as well. It's also available on Amazon. And it's pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. So that's a good book, I would say. When was this written? When was this written? 1967. So after the British occupation. Yeah, okay. The Rashtrakutas, I'm sure Majumdar has written about that as well. Bharat says, can Smriti be ancient constitutional emergency? As Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Vedas promote Varnas as occupation, skill-based, not birth. The Vedas, look, if you read the Rig Veda, there's no Varna, as far as I can remember. The later Vedas may speak about that, okay? Skill-based, not birth. We were stable, prosperous for thousands of years. Every society has problems, of course. But for us, our problems are terrible, right? Apparently. Can the Smritis be ancient constitutional emergency? I don't know about that. I don't know. Don't know. But I agree with you on what you're saying. Absolutely. I do. Shriman Monsieur says, what's the approximate percentage culpability split of insufficient funding, competence, willpower, internal, external pressures, etc., that prevents India's full-scale militarization and technological leadership? You missed a very big factor here. The education system. The education system has at least 67% culpability. And it is rotten on purpose. It is a rotten system. It is rotten to the core. And it is kept that way on purpose. To produce generation after generation of mentally colonized zombies and sheep. So that those who rule India can keep benefiting from that and keep ruling by keeping the population unwilling or unable to think critically. Because if you can think critically, you will understand what the national interest is. You will understand what leadership actually means. And then if you know the definition of these things, you will hold the people who are in government accountable. And you will compare their track record with what it should be. The education system is at least 67% responsible, at least 50%, let's say. Insufficient funding, all that comes downstream of that. I mean, look at the contribution of, what percentage of India's GDP does it go into? What percentage of India's GDP goes into R&D? Less than 0.9%, 0.84%. What is the percentage? Let me see. Okay, first of all, let's go into that. What percentage of India's GDP goes into R&D? 0.84%, is it? There we have it. See, there we have it. And so that's another factor. The quality of India's higher education system is also abysmal. There's no real research happening there. So I will not blame it on willpower. Competence, yes, but what produces competence? It's the education system that produces competence. So competence is a downstream factor. The root cause is the rotten education system. Insufficient funding, there's tremendous funding. There's tremendous amounts of funding. The Indian education system is an industry. So billions of dollars worth of industry, right? But it's a rotten system. And if you look at India's institutes of higher education, for example, some IITs, let's say, I am not naming any specific IIT. Okay, the question you should first ask yourself is this: what is the last time a world-class technological breakthrough came from India? We have so many IITs. When was the last time a world-class technological breakthrough came from one of the IITs? In the last 30 years, let's say. Nothing. Zero. Okay. Now, if you go to the IITs, without naming any IIT specifically, you will find that their auditoriums are world-class auditoriums, $1 million auditoriums. If you go to the washrooms, world-class washrooms, $1 million washrooms. Now go to the lab and see the equipment. Not world-class. You see, these are the problems. The funding is there. The funding goes in the wrong directions. Why do IITs why do they give humanities degrees? Sure, teach sociology or whatever to your students to broaden their horizons, but don't offer degrees in these fields. These are the Indian Institutes of Technology, right? So these are the problems. Some of the problems. I can go on for hours. Okay. Abhishek says, watching you for years, got first salary. Congratulations. Congratulations. Great job. Well done. Thank you for the streams. You once said that real leaders take unpopular decisions. Why can't good decisions be popular? Okay. First of all, congratulations. First of all, thank you for watching for years. Congratulations on the first salary. I'm very, very pleased, very happy for you. Do well. Now, the question, I once said real leaders take unpopular decisions. Why can't good decisions be popular? Because decisions that are good in the long term are going to involve short-term pain. For example, if you want India's society to develop, you need higher growth of GDP. Right now, maybe the GDP is growing at 6-7% per year. Let's say I want it to grow at 15% per year. Is it impossible? It's not impossible. For that, what needs to be done? A lot of the money of the government, which can be used for boosting manufacturing and so much more, is right now being spent on the Ladli Behna Yojanas and all these schemes. These schemes don't create, it's not an investment in the quality of the population. These are simply freebies that are given to people. Thousands and thousands of crores of rupees every year in various states. How does that benefit the nation? I'm not sure how. It gets you votes for sure. If you shut down all these Ladli Behna and other yojanas and use that money for let's say industrialization further, or let's say building more warships or fighter planes or whatever it is, isn't that going to be unpopular in the short term? Of course, it will be terribly unpopular on the people who are getting all this money and now they no longer get the money. They'll vote you out of power. Let's say you want to end reservations and make everybody equal. And let's say you want to do that over a period of 20 years. The people who are getting reservations, they will vote you out of power. You see, these decisions can never be popular. That's the problem. Okay. Cacti maniac. Cacti maniac says, as an aspiring landscaper, I want to tackle India's urban green space problems. How should I learn about this systematically, and what system should I build to develop practical expertise? How should you learn this systematically? Aspiring landscaper, you have to go through a course of urban landscaping, and you have to look into case studies as to how did other countries solve these problems. There are many countries that have done a great job of greening their cities, let's say, right? So how has this been addressed in the past? Take 5 case studies of 5 very different countries. How did they do it? What were the specific challenges and problems they each faced in their cities, and how did they solve the problems? So go through multiple case studies, and also learn how to do landscaping. I suppose there must be, courses or whatever for that. Get the certification or degree or whatever, and then you can, do it in practice, I suppose. That's what I can tell you. Apart from that, I don't know what to tell you, because I don't know much about urban landscaping. I know that there are tremendous green space problems in India. A lot of India's cityscapes are concrete hellholes. Very little greenery, right? A lot of cities in India are like this. You need to have sufficient and ample green cover in cities. That makes the cities cooler. It makes them much more pleasant to live in. It makes them livable. It's overall beneficial for everybody. I'm sure it brings down the rate of mental illness, if whatever, mental health issues or whatever, right? So how do you learn this systematically? Join a program, a course. That's the best way to learn it systematically. If you want to do it at home, I'm sure you can do it, but I'm not sure how. That is something you'll have to look into. I'm not sure how. Yeah, that's how I do it. All the way. All the best. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, why do electrons move but not protons while rubbing 2 materials together? Why does a spark suddenly jump through air? You see, if you look at the structure of an atom, you will see that protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus, and electrons are found orbiting, let's say, the nucleus. Now, if you move a proton out of a nucleus, it's extremely difficult to do that because of the incredibly strong nuclear forces. And if you actually are able to dislodge a proton and move it out of a nucleus, let's say you are somehow able to do it, then the nucleus transmutes into a different element. Okay? It becomes a totally different element. So that's why protons don't move when you rub 2 materials together. Why do electrons move? Because electrons are lightly bound to atoms compared to protons and neutrons, which are in the nucleus. And electrons can be surrendered to other atoms. If an atom loses an electron, it doesn't become the atom of a different element. It simply becomes an ionization. So because of the properties of matter, that's why this is what happens. Why does a spark suddenly jump through air? Because it overcomes the potential difference. That's why. Shaksgum Quadruple 6 says, history of British Indian Ocean Territory and MH370 conspiracy. Look, I don't know much about the MH370 conspiracy. It's an aircraft that has been lost. We have never found it, as far as I know. And that's a big mystery. It's one of the big unsolved mysteries in aviation. The history of the British Indian Ocean Territory. So the so-called British Indian Ocean Territory is historically, geologically, it's part of the Lakshadweep, Maldives archipelago. It's part of that. And it technically belongs to Mauritius, and the British have illegally held on to it, and they have given it to the Americans, who have built illegally a massive military base there. And to do this, they had to first evict the natives of the archipelago, the Chagos archipelago, and those people were evicted illegally by force. And for decades, they have been living away from their homeland, and they've not been allowed to come back. That in brief is the history. Varinder Marwa says, God forbids Bhakra Dam breaks effect on Punjab, Haryana. God forbid it happens. I hope it never happens. I don't know what's going to be the effect in Punjab, Haryana. It will not be a good effect, I'm sure. I don't know how big this dam is, how much water it holds. I'm sure we can look it up. But look, overall, I would say that this should never happen. The effect will not be nice at all. It will be highly unpleasant. It will be very destructive. And I'm sure when you build dams, you ensure that let me just quickly see, where is the Bhakra Dam? Let's go to the map and let's look it up quickly. Bhakra Dam. Okay. So let's zoom out first of all to orient ourselves. Okay, that's where it is. And it is built on the Sutlej River. And it's a massive, massive reservoir that's been created out of that. Gobind Sagar, Sutlej River, Bhakra Nangal Dam. Nangal is here. So if we look at the dam itself, this is what it looks like, right? So you can see it's a massive amount of water it's holding back. So look, if it breaks, it's going to be a disaster. That's all I can tell you. It's going to be a disaster, and we never want to see that happen. Its effect on Punjab, Haryana is going to be most likely devastating if that happens. So we hope it never happens. Ansh Divu says, do you enjoy reading sci-fi? Foundation series is great. Foundation series? Ooh. This, you mean? Okay. All right, sir. Okay. Okay, good guy Safi says, what causes a person to start hating the religion? There could be 100 different factors. Maybe the religion is victimizing somebody. Maybe it's victimizing them. Maybe they feel constrained because of what the religion requires them to do or doesn't require or doesn't allow them to do. Maybe it's because they are taught to hate it because their textbooks tell them that the religion is primitive and backward and all that. There could be 100 different reasons, right? What are the pros of a good education system? A million pros. See, what's the purpose of education? The purpose of education is to give you the tools you need to succeed in life. It's to give you the tools you need to be a confident, capable, and successful human being. It's to give you the tools to make the world a better place and to potentially lead society in your country, if possible, if required. That's what a good education system does. So these are all pros. And a bad education system doesn't do any of that. That's terrible, isn't it? Yeah. Varinder Marma says, how does autosomal DNA change but haplos remain the same? Even haplos change. See, there are two types of chromosomes, right? We have the autosomes and we have the sex chromosomes. The sex chromosomes are the X and Y chromosomes. Males, if you examine their DNA, you will find XY, X and Y, one X chromosome, one Y chromosome. If you see females, for them you will find two X chromosomes. So the DNA that's found in the X and Y chromosomes, that is your non-autosomal DNA. And all the other DNA is called autosomal DNA. So autosomal DNA changes because of mutations over time. And even the haplogroups change. Haplogroups are X and Y DNA mutations. A haplogroup is not a mutation, but by the way, a haplogroup is a group of individuals who all carry the same mutation that originated at some point in the past in one person. So even haplogroups change. Haplogroups also mutate. That's why R, for example, that's why the Y chromosomal haplogroup R split into R1 and R2. And that's why R1 split into R1A and R1B. So even that changes. These mutations happen because of various reasons. There's a certain rate at which mutation happens. And that's a natural process. Right? So both kinds of DNA do change. Shreyas Abhinav says, what books for understanding social, political, media psychology, memetics? I need to understand these subjects deeply, and what knowledge for satisfy. Psychology. I don't know what books you need for psychology. Political. What political? Social, what social? Sociology. Look, I am terrible at book recommendations unless I come prepared in advance. Are you saying sociology or social? Social what? Social sciences? Memetics? Media psychology? I have no idea. Political what? I'm afraid I have no answers to your questions. Unfortunately, this question. I'm very sorry, but I don't know. I can't recall any book that satisfies your criteria. Media psychology? I have absolutely no idea. But how do I understand that? Because of the million things I've read. I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't recall any book. Terribly sorry, sir. Terribly sorry, Shreyas Abhinav. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, do you play chess? Any FIDE ELO rankings you have? I haven't played chess in ages. I used to play chess as a teenager. I was, you could say, pretty good at that. I used to routinely beat adults at that, but that's a long time ago. Then I gave up. I quit chess. Why did I quit chess? It was very interesting, first of all. And secondly, chess takes a lot of time. A single chess game, chess match can last several hours. I didn't have the time for that. So I quit. Yeah, I have no rankings, no ratings. Nope. Bharat says, sorry for repetitive questions. I thought they got deleted. Okay, no issues. No issues. Somajit Mukherjee says, discuss Pala and Sen Empire in Bengal, underrated powers. Look, I don't remember the history of these empires. Pala. But yes, the Pala Empire emerged out of a period of over a century of absolute chaos in the Vanga region, right? Absolute chaos and Matsya Nyaya. And then the people got tired and they elected a king. Who was the first king of the Pala Empire? Who was that? Shashank, was it? Shashank. I suppose it was Shashank. Or somebody else. Who was the first king of the Pala dynasty in Bengal? Gopal. It was Gopal, right? He was chosen. He was elected. Matsya Nyaya. It was Gopala the first. His successor was Dharmapala and so on. Right. That's what I can remember. Apart from that, I don't know what to discuss because I haven't studied them in great detail. Sena Empire, I don't remember right now. Okay. Duplicate Paradise says, do you agree with modern science on the size of the universe? It is measurements. It's not a claim or a belief. It's measurements. How far can we see? Roughly 45 or so billion light years in any one direction. That's the observable universe. It has a diameter of roughly 95 roughly billion light years. What's the diameter? What is the diameter of the observable universe in light years? Yeah, 93 billion. Yeah. That's observational evidence. It's not a belief. If the observational evidence changes, then the number changes. So it's not about do I agree? Do I agree with 2 plus 2 equal to 4? Of course I agree. Right? Okay. Ramya Tanai says, how important were the Rajputs to India's history? Very important, of course. They, well, there's a lot of hate towards Rajputs these days, right? The Rajputs, they fought and bled and died for India's sovereignty for several centuries. Several centuries of the Turkic invasions. It was the Rajputs who kept repelling these invasions one after the other. And they suffered tremendously. And all their leadership was killed off. Yeah, by the Turks eventually. So very important. But you'll find very few textbooks or history books that deal with the Rajput resistance that went on for centuries. So I'll tell you how much time, how long did the Rajputs resist the foreigners, the Turks? The first part of India that fell to the Turks was Gandhar, present-day Afghanistan. It was fully Hindu-Buddhist. It was the first part of India, of Bharatvarsh, that fell, that was occupied permanently by the Turks. Gandhar, now called Afghanistan. And then the Turks obviously kept, pushing inwards. And who stopped them? It was the kingdoms that we now call the Rajputs. Their rulers are now called the Rajputs. At that time, the word Rajput did not exist. And when was the Delhi Sultanate established? A couple of centuries later. When was the Mughal kingdom established? 5 centuries later. All that time, the Rajputs fought and resisted. Very important, of course. Okay, VSVS says, good to see you, VSVS. If India even has one non-BJP term, are we doomed? Who knows? I don't know. Should we find out? Is that it's possible? It's possible. It's possible. But can't say for sure. Would you like to find out? Okay. Stochastic AI says, is quantum espionage still sci-fi? Since information can be encoded in quantum states, could entanglement or quantum sensing ever transform intelligence gathering? Excuse me. Sorry. Let me have a sip of water. Water. Good. Is okay. So, quantum espionage. Information can be encoded in quantum states. Yeah, sure. Okay. Could entanglement or quantum sensing ever transform intelligence gathering? Eventually it will. Eventually it will. It's still sci-fi as of today. Eventually it will. See, you can encode information in quantum states for sure, but the quantum states are fragile, so you have to. The problem with quantum states is that they are fragile. They can easily decohere if they interact with the outside environment. So let's say I take a molecule. Let's say I take an atom. Okay, let's say I take a molecule, which is also a quantum mechanical object. I take a molecule of oxygen, O2, and I encode some information in its quantum state, which means the states of the electrons, right? But that molecule of O2 is part of this gigantic gas. It's going to collide with other molecules, and the quantum information will decohere. It will be lost. So for information to be encoded in quantum states and persist, you need to have as perfect a vacuum as is possible. And that is something we can only do in quantum computers right now, which are extremely delicate and fragile systems. And yeah, entanglement, all that will happen, all that. Yeah, you use entanglement, etc. inside quantum computers. So the point is, it's still in the future. It's still very far in the future. Not very far, maybe 10, 20 years in the future. But eventually you will have all this. Prateep Kumar Roy says, can the new idea of conflubiotics solve the problem of antibiotic resistance? What is conflubiotics? That's something I seem to have not heard before. Conflubiotics. What is conflubiotics? A novel paradigm-shifting strategy for designing antibiotics to fight drug-resistant superbugs, developed by Jerusalem University's researchers. Okay, Professor Dmitry Slyasukhovsky, etc. Instead of relying on traditional stalled discovery pipelines, the methodology treats existing antibiotics as molecular blueprints. Okay. You identify key bioactive structural domains from entirely different antibiotic families. You fuse these distinct core domains into a single newly designed hybrid molecules, and so on and so forth. Massive library exploration, unprecedented exposure, novel attack mechanisms. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So the problem with antibiotics is that eventually, because of indiscriminate use of antibiotics by certain doctors, what happens is that certain bacteria and so on, they become resistant to antibiotics. They become superbugs. That's when you get MDR diseases, multiple drug resistant strains of, let's say, malaria or tuberculosis or whatever. Sometimes you have XDR versions, extensively drug resistant strains. So for that, now you will need newer antibiotics. And this conflubiotics approach seems to be very promising. Yes. Okay, Varinder Marwa says, does Canada have the potential of top GDP per capita if it stays Canada? Look, what are Canada's strengths? Massive territorial area. Small population, but huge territory. Huge amount of resources of various kinds. Massive quantities of oil and gas. It's especially oil, crude oil, uranium, and so much more. Metals, ores, all that. So it can be a great exporter of these materials and earn a lot of money through that. But if Canada wants to be in this game for the long run, it needs to become a manufacturing power. It's already a fully industrialized country, so it's not that hard for it to do that. So it has the potential, I would say. It has a skilled population, highly educated population. The only issue for Canada is that it's not entirely sovereign. It's a de facto 51st state of the United States. That's the problem. But it has the potential for sure. Yes, it does. Good guy Safi says, can sanctions destroy a country's growth? I don't know if you remember, I asked about a hypothetical nation. I do remember that. Yes, it was an interesting question. That's why I remember that. Wouldn't it be a threat and be sanctioned like Russia? So can sanctions destroy a nation's growth? Yeah, they can. Look at Iran. Iran should have by now become middle income nation, but it's still a low income nation because of sanctions. Iran's education system is far superior to that of India. Iran's governance is far superior to that of India. Even despite all the sanctions and all, there's no garbage on the streets and so on, right? So Iran by now should have become a middle income nation, but look at it, still a low income nation. Its GDP per capita is still above that of India, but still. Cuba, look at Cuba. Still in the 1960s, right? So sanctions can destroy a country's growth. Now, if you have a hypothetical nation, wouldn't it be a threat? It will be a threat. Will it be sanctioned like Russia? Look at Russia. Russia's GDP is growing despite Russia being sanctioned. Yes? So Russia, sanctions don't affect it to the extent that you imagine they would. Why? Because Russia is an autarky. Russia has every possible resource it can wish for on its territory. When you have that, you don't need to depend on anybody else. You can have your own economic growth. You can have your own population consume what you produce, and you are happy and good to go. You need nothing from anybody else. So if a nation is an autarky, sanctions, and if it has a trained population, a highly trained population, everything is fine. Sanctions won't really affect it much. Abhijit Kumar says, great scientists like Newton deeply believed in God, yet no atheist has ever dared to question them, right? What do you think is the reason? Because their theories have been tested and they are right. See, Newton's theory, Newtonian mechanics, gravitation, those have been superseded. I mean, Newton's law of gravity has been superseded by general relativity, but Newtonian gravity is still incredibly accurate. You can send human beings to the moon and bring them back without using general relativity, using only Newton's formulation. Okay, so his theory is right. Eventually, all theories will have some flaws and they'll be superseded, but the theory is still super right. So when the theory works, you can't disprove it. Why will anybody question such a guy? See, you have to separate the theory from the person who proposed it, or who derived it, or who formulated it. The person can be wrong about 500 other things, but this theory is right. So nobody questions the theory. Right? Does anybody question Ramanujan? Nobody questions Ramanujan. He was a deep believer. Right? So, as long as the theory you've put forth is correct, nobody can question that. Nobody can. Prove it wrong. Come on. If you dare. If you can. They can't. Okay. Somajit says, do spiritual and dharmic podcasts love listening to you? Spiritual and dharmic podcasts. Well, I have not done that, have I? I'll think about it. I generally don't do that. I don't think I've done any of that, right? I will consider that. Thank you for the recommendation, the suggestion. Thank you. Okay, Arpit Gulani says, the enantiomer question reminded me of the weak force and parity conundrum. How come weak force interactions are exclusive to left-handed fermions? This also I don't remember. It's particle physics, high energy physics. That's not my thing. How come similar problem exists in chemistry too? I don't know. Look, the weak force, the weak nuclear force. Why are those interactions exclusive to left-handed fermions? I don't remember. It's not my thing. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what this is about. Are weak force interactions exclusive to left-handed fermions? There seems to be a parallel here for sure. Yeah. But why is it the case? I'm not sure. To go deeper into this, you have to go into quantum electrodynamics. Not quantum chromodynamics for sure, because that's quarks. But I don't remember right now. It's not something I've really, it's never been part of my wheelhouse. So there clearly is a parallel here between chemistry and the weak force interactions, but I'm not sure what the reason is. How come it's so? And I don't even remember about the weak force interaction being exclusive to left-handed fermions that obey Fermi-Dirac statistics. Don't remember. Sorry. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, have you heard about the glue that can be switched on and off design in Israel? I don't remember that. I've not heard of it. Why is India so far behind in R&D when compared to other countries? Because of the rotten education system, and also because of India's industry, which has no interest in developing its own technologies. It simply wants to license technologies from abroad and mass produce and make profits. It doesn't want to develop its own technologies. I mean, so that's why India is so far behind, because the mindset is that of short-term profits, not of long-term strategic vision. Now, what is this glue that can be switched on and off? Now, first of all, okay, fine. The glue that can be switched on and off. What is that? Switchable adhesive. Okay, so I've not heard of this, but sure, yeah. Okay. So India is far behind because of, first of all, the rotten education system. Go to India's universities and see if any research is being done, or they publish papers. What's the quality of the papers? What breakthroughs do they produce? Nothing. So these are the reasons why. You see, Rohan Bidi says, why do radio waves and X-rays pass through matter, but visible light does not, except transparent objects, when all are part of the same electromagnetic spectrum? So radio waves and X-rays have very different wavelengths. X-rays have very short wavelengths compared to visible light. Radio waves have much longer wavelengths. Right? So even X-rays can't pass through everything. X-rays can't pass through metal. X-rays can't really pass through bone. I mean, depending on the strength of the X-rays, it may. Right? So look, I'll tell you what. Even visible light can pass through non-transparent objects. Close your eyes and stare and look in the direction of the sun. You will see a light passing through your eyelids. You will see a red light because the blood vessels, right? So visible light does pass through your closed eyelids to a certain extent, right? So all electromagnetic waves, depending on the intensity, pass through matter to a certain extent. Now, X-rays are higher frequency. Higher frequency? Of course, higher frequency. Shorter wavelength. Yeah. And then you have gamma rays, which go through much more. Gamma rays can pass through even metal. Not a kilometer of metal, maybe a few centimeters of metal, and so on. That's how it is. So it depends on the frequency, the wavelength, and so on of light. The higher the frequency and the shorter the wavelength, the higher the energy each photon has. What's the energy of a photon? E is equal to hc upon lambda, right? Or h nu or hf. So if nu or f is high, the energy is high. So its penetrating power is higher, right? So X-rays do pass through matter to some extent. Radio waves have lower wavelengths, if I recall correctly. Okay. Do radio waves have a lower wavelength than visible light? I'm pretty sure they do, but let's double check this. Yes. No, they don't. Okay. Longer wavelength. Yes, correct, of course. Longer wavelength. Much longer wavelength. 100 kilometers and so on. So why do so the radio waves do not pass through matter. They just come in through wherever. It's a different mechanism. They bounce off the ionosphere and so on and so forth, and they go everywhere. So there are different mechanisms for each of these different classes of electromagnetic waves. Okay, Varinder Marwa says, Fertile Crescent is a desert today, same future for others. Fertile Crescent is what? Desert. It's a desert today. Same future for others. Which others? Look, climate change happens. Climate changes. The Sahara Desert was once very fertile, very green and lush green. Today, look at it. It's desert. So eventually you will have desertification and forestification, if it's a word, happening in various parts of the world. The Fertile Crescent is, look, it's always the past 10,000 years, past 7,000-8,000 years, been the way it is right now. It's not really a fertile place. It's just two rivers that make it fertile. Only a thin band of land around the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. But for some reason, the Western scholars call it a fertile crescent. It's hardly fertile at all. But eventually, yeah, climate change will play its thing everywhere eventually. The Priyam Vrat says, if I wanna electronic Okay, let me try and understand. If I want to electronic project generate dollars with benchtop electronic equipments, example precision multimeters, gigahertz oscilloscope, spectrum analyzer, solar iron, hot air gun for SMT components, how can I find market or project for my company? Suggest help tip for startups, please. So let's say you have electronic equipment, benchtop electronic equipments, precision multimeters, gigahertz, all these things. SMT components. How can I find a market or project for my company? Okay, I'll tell you what. If you're a startup, if you want to go into business, what is business? You have to ask yourself, what is business? How does a business make money? How do you get somebody to give their money to you? That is the fundamental question of business, right? How do you get a customer? And how do you persuade the customer to hand over their hard-earned money to you? The simple answer is you have to give them something of real value in return. Now, what kind of value do people want? What is value for a person? Value is typically you solve a problem that they have, right? Any problem, but a problem that's worth giving money for in exchange for the solution. So what you have to do is you have to find problems that exist in society. A lot of people have those problems, and then you have to create a solution to that problem. So now there are, look, what are the classes and categories of problems? There are health problems. What else? What other? I'm sure the aspirational problems. Make them more money, save them more time, that sort of thing. So which categories of these problems can you solve with electronic components? I'm sure there are lots. There are lots. So you have to find existing gaps where there's a group of people who all have a similar problem or the same problem, and nobody is solving their problem. You have to identify such gaps in the market, and then you have to fill the gap. You have to create a solution that's valuable, and that's how we do it. So now find a gap in the market that can be solved with electronics. That's the principle of how to do it. Now I don't know what exact avenue or mechanism you will find to solve problems and provide value, but the main thing is provide value, then you will get money. All right, that's what I can offer you, sir. All right, all the best. Do well, sir. Do well. Sarvesh Verma says, my cat, Mr. Caligula Commodus Severus, has been judging your stream since 2022. You consistently passed his very strict standards. Please keep doing whatever you're doing. You have his royal approval. At your service, Mr. Caligula Commodus Severus. Cats generally approve of me. So I'm glad Mr. Caligula Commodus Severus does approve. I'm very pleased to have, and I'm very grateful to have his royal approval. Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. Stochastic AI says, have we lost the large language model battle very badly to China? Where do you think our R&D efforts should be directed as far as AI is concerned? Should we focus more on optimization and domain-specific deterministic systems? We should create our own large language models. Okay. For that, you need a certain number of things. You need the chips, the high-end chips, very expensive chips, and really high-end. If India starts buying very large numbers of high-end chips like NVIDIA chips or whatever, the US will put an export ban on us. So we may have to make do with lower-end chips, but still decent chips. So to create a world-class large language model, you need a minimum of 1 lakh high-end chips. Ideally top class, if not one level below. At least 1 lakh. That's a tremendous amount of money, firstly. Then you need the brains who can take these 100,000 chips or 1 million chips, okay, bring them together and create a whole system out of that. How to make them work together. Then you need tremendous quantities of data, and not dirty data, clean, high quality data. So you need a whole team of people who can clean data and make it, high quality enough for a large language model to be built out of it. The data, where does it come from? There are various ways of getting data. So you need that. And then you need a tremendous amount of electricity to run the whole project, and cooling power, because your chips are going to heat up. And then you need several months, maybe a year, maybe a couple of years. That's what you need. Yeah. That's to create one large language model, world class. And there are other ways of doing it. You can distill models and all and so on. It's possible. You can do that. It's cheaper. But it's, the US is not fond of that. So what should India focus on? India should focus on creating its own large language models. General LLMs, domain specific, everything everybody else is doing. India should not give up the battle. Okay, no, we'll not focus on what the Americans and Chinese are doing. We'll focus on domain specific systems or whatever. No, India should focus on everything. India can catch up very quickly in a couple of years with the Americans and the Chinese if we have a concerted national effort. I think it can still very much happen. So we have not lost the battle yet, but we are behind. We haven't really participated in the battle so far. We have Sarvam, of course, who are doing great work, but we need more models. Hi for Bhai says education needs to teach kids duties and dharma. Apart, among other things, sure, yes. Stalingrad says India is helping Nepal on the very day of the floods, while Assam has repeatedly been ignored for days. Many Nepalese still hate and insult India. Thoughts? Look, if many Nepalese hate India today, there may be reasons for that. The Nepalese are our own people. We're the same people, aren't we? So I'm not getting into that matter, that some Nepalese hate India or insult India or whatever. There are many Indians who hate and insult India also, by the way. Okay, so that's fine. Now, Assam has been ignored for days reportedly. That's concerning. Have you heard of Manipur? It's not been... Okay, that's not a flood situation, but Manipur is a disaster, an ongoing disaster. Forgotten, right? Forgotten completely. Has the problem been solved? No. So that's how India operates. That's how India operates. We don't really care about our own people. But when it comes to a nation that's... Look, Nepal is... I don't even consider Nepal to be a... Of course, I respect Nepal's sovereignty and the fact that it is a different separate nation, but the people of Nepal are our own people, and we should help them as much as possible, as soon as possible. So I am not against India helping Nepal at all. India should extend every possible assistance to Nepal. And if some Nepalese people hate India, I'm not going to hate them back. No, I will not. But yes, the fact that we have disasters in India also which don't get the same attention from the government, that is disappointing, to say the least. Divansh Mishra says, what am I saying? Let's start again. Divansh Mishra says, did Nehru's acceptance of China's annexation of Tibet endanger India today, enabling Beijing's massive Brahmaputra dam project? I can give you the answer in one word. The one word is yes. Of course, yes. Yes. Incredible. Anabil Sarkar says, you should do podcast with Think School. All right, so thank you for the recommendation and suggestion. Thank you. Somalia Paul says, hey, it would have been great if, like Iran, we would have created allies like Sri Lanka, Burma, Bangladesh, Nepal, like Iran, access of resistance. Your views? I agree, we should have done that. These nations that you mention, These are all part of the Indosphere, which includes what is now Malaysia, Singapore, um, Thailand, Burma, Indonesia, Philippines, all of that. We should have done that. We can still do it. Why are we not doing it? I completely agree with you. These are our civilizational offspring, right? If you go to Thailand, they are more Indian than us. Okay, they display their culture openly without being ashamed of it. What is their culture? It's our culture. It may look foreign to you somewhat, but it's our culture. It's Indian culture with Thai characteristics. And it's not from their perspective, it is their culture. They may not even remember that it's Indian culture. So the Thai people, if you go to Thailand, it's so much more Indian than us. You go to Suvarnabhumi airport, you know what I mean. So you know what? I agree with you completely. Somijit Mukherjee says, my heart yearns for Bharat to reclaim its past glory. I feel you, my friend. I feel you, my brother. And my heart yearns for that too. And it will happen. Hopefully within our lifetimes. Yes? Somali Paul says, I think India and China can never work together because China is the biggest manufacturing power. We will always become biggest market to them either way. Well, we can also become a manufacturing power. Nobody is stopping us from doing that. Only our lack of ambition or the lack of ambition of our governments and bureaucrats is what stops us historically. That's what stops that's what has stopped us. Historically, India was a bigger manufacturing power than China. Historically, we were the bigger manufacturing power. We were the bigger industrial power. We accounted for a much larger share of the world's GDP than China, historically for at least 1500 years. So naturally, we should be the biggest power. Why are we not? Because of the mediocrity and lack of vision and ambition of those who have ruled us over the past 80 years. That's what. Hypothetical question, says Somalia Paul. Whole subcontinent from Afghanistan to Burma uses a single currency like BIMSTEC. Could that time West and China would have feared India? The only thing that makes somebody fear you is not currency, it's hard power. Hard power. How much damage can you do on demand to their interests? A currency is one component of that, sure. But to have the whole subcontinent united under a single currency, you need to be that powerful that nobody will question that inside the subcontinent. See, today, if you say to Bangladesh, use the Indian rupee, they'll say, no, we will use the taka. You can't make us use it. But if you are powerful enough, they'll happily use the Indian rupee instead of the taka. So to make the whole subcontinent use one currency, you need to first be powerful enough to rule the whole subcontinent. And if you have that kind of hard power, everybody will fear you. Yeah. Ankita Kachap says, good evening, ma'am. Good evening. Question. Nepalese government denied foreign agencies to hold on ground rescue and search operation, including India's. What do you think of this attitude? Is the government trying to protect some formidable details? Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? Many nations offered to send personnel to help with the search and rescue efforts and other efforts. And so far, even as of today, I believe they've said no. Let me just check it. Has the government of Nepal refused foreign offers of assistance during the current flood crisis? And if yes, does that refusal still exist today? Still stand? I think it does, right? Okay, so it initially declined, but now they're allowing targeted and specialized international assistance. So it's now permitting specialized experts like tunnel rescue teams and forensic DNA specialists from India and China. So now they're opening up, but initially they said no. I think that's very strange. That's a very strange attitude to have. When you have undergone this sort of horrific disaster, and India is offering to help. Why refuse that? Even China, I don't know. China is not trustworthy for anybody, but India is offering to help. Why would you refuse India's help? It's not like India is going to take your territory or anything. I don't know. Very strange attitude, very counterproductive attitude. I don't know what is the logical basis for Nepal's initial decision not to accept aid from India or other countries. Are they trying to protect something? What is there to protect? I don't know. It did not make sense to me. I don't have an answer to this question. I don't have any logical answer to this question. And I don't want to ascribe motives like arrogance or whatever, but I don't know. It's strange. It's perplexing. It's inexplicable. And they should not have done that. I can understand saying no to China because China possibly caused this disaster, perhaps. And China is a nation that has rapacious, hegemonic, expansionist tendencies, but India doesn't have that. India and Nepal, we're the same people. Why reject Indian assistance? I don't know. Makes no sense. Somijit Mukherjee says, to be honest, India needs more and better our right-wing parties than BJP. No comments. I don't comment about Indian politics. So it's a standing rule for me. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, the on and off glue I mentioned is microwave recyclable glue developed at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, a material called Tetra ALA. Google. Okay, let's Google that. What is Tetra ALA? Tetra ALA. Newly developed, fully recyclable thermoset adhesive that can cure under visible light in seconds and can be completely debonded or decomposed on demand using a standard household microwave. Fantastic. Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Fantastic. Tetra ALA. Alpha lipoic acid. Fantastic. Very useful thing. Good. All right. The Priyamvrat says, thanks for the business startup tip. Thank you. You're very welcome, sir. US market needs cheaper medical devices and cheaper electronic testing and repair devices. Can begin with services. You can begin somewhere. See what you need if you're a startup. First of all, you need cash flow. Okay? You need to first of all have cash flow that will help you break even, because to begin a startup, you have to invest in equipment and all that, which means you've already spent money on that. So you need to first of all recover that money. For that, you need cash flow. So you can start, you can begin with services, have the cash flow coming in. Cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. Okay, remember that. You need to have the cash flow coming in. Once you have broken even and you're now profitable, then you can reinvest those profits into something that's maybe manufacturing, not just services. So you need to have a clear long-term step-by-step plan and vision that first of all, I need cash flow for X amount of time, and I should break even in Y amount of time. And then once I have broken even and I'm now profitable, let's say my income is greater than my running expenses, whatever I'm burning up, then I'm profitable. Then how do I use those profits? That's what you need to do. That's the overall principle. If the US market needs cheaper medical devices and cheaper electronic testing and repair services, you can begin with services for sure. Certainly. All right. All the best, Priyamvrat. All the best. Do well. I wish you great success. Swayam says, love your geopolitical podcasts. Keep inspiring us. Thank you so much. I will try my best. I will. Thank you. Okay. Godliness says, what kind of victory is this where you are now looking at complete economic collapse, annihilation of your critical infrastructure, of your army and nuclear program? Statement of Iranian speaker is concerning. Are you referring to Iran? Statement, I don't know what statement he has put out, so I can't say. What kind of victory is this? You are now looking at complete economic collapse because Trump has announced something on paper. The US has imposed every imaginable economic sanction on Iran since 1979. But now apparently Trump's sanctions are going to destroy Iran. His most toothless sanctions yet. Annihilation of critical infrastructure. If America does further attacks on Iran to annihilate Iran's critical infrastructure, Iran will annihilate the entire critical infrastructure of the entire West Asia region, and they have the firepower to do that. How do you know their nuclear program is destroyed? How do you know that? Because Trump announced it last year? Let's not swallow all Western propaganda wholesale. Let's not swallow any propaganda, Western or Eastern or whatever, wholesale. Please use your critical thinking abilities. You have them. Don't believe everything that's told to you. How do you know their critical infrastructure is annihilated? Of course, they have suffered heavy damage, and still they are fighting back. They can still do what they need. They are in a position to. Trump says Iran's navy is at the bottom of the ocean. So how is Iran in a position to close the Strait of Hormuz? Please don't believe all this propaganda. That's my point. Varinder Marwa says, when will we make our culture and civilization cool? We make our culture and civilization cool through art. Through art. That's why art is so important. Music, film, drawing, painting, graphic design. We are the civilization that originated what is now known in the West as the superhero concept. We had heroes who were genuine superheroes. Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, and so many others. Why don't we have artworks, statues, films, movies, music celebrating these great superheroes, genuine superheroes? Art does that. Our artists need to get going with this. All right? I'm sure it'll happen soon. All right. That was the last one. So I'm going to end this here. Thank you so much for all the questions. It was great fun, as always. And I look forward to seeing you soon. So until then, keep asking questions, keep learning, keep raising your standards. And I will see you in the next one very soon. Take care for that. Until then, take care. Goodbye for now.